Hi guys, and welcome back to another brand new video. Today we're talking about what's in my video camera bag for 2024. And I'm gonna start right now. Now I love watching these types of videos, finding out what other photographers use, finding out what other filmmakers use, how they get their shots, what cameras, what lenses, what accessories, what drones they use. I just find these videos incredibly fascinating. So what I thought I'd make an updated video about what's in my camera bag for 2024. So before we start talking about the contents of my camera bag, let's talk about the actual camera bag itself. And the one that I'm using at the moment is this. This is my Polar Pro drone trekker. Now I love this bag over others. I've used Billingham, I've used Low Pro, and I've just always ended up gravitating towards this one, mostly to do with its size. It's a great size bag. It fits so much stuff in there. You can fit your gimbal on the front, you can fit a tripod on the side, you can put some cameras in there, some lenses, and you've got enough room for some accessories and even a drone if you've got one. Now it's big, but it's not so big that you can't bring it on an airline, and for me, that's really important. I need a bag that I can bring with me pretty much anywhere, including air travel. As you can see, I've been to all over the world with this bag. I've had this bag for a couple years. I've been to America, I've been to Northern Ireland, I've been to Greece, I've been to Malta, I've been to Croatia, and this bag is with me the entire journey. So having a bag that can fit on an airline, if you're a travel photographer, you'll know it is really important. You can't put it in your hold luggage because it could end up getting damaged or broken. Now, as well, you've also got a waterproof cover. Now, the bag is overall waterproof, which is great as I live in England, as it always seems to be raining. But if you are going to a really wet environment, maybe it's absolutely chucking it down, or maybe you're going near a waterfall, you've got this waterproof cover that you can put over it to really protect your belongings. Because obviously, camera equipment definitely can't get wet. Now, it's also backloading, which means you need to take it off to actually take all the camera equipment down. So it means if you are putting it down on some mud, like for example, I was in this quite wet woodland photographing some red squirrels, I could actually lay it down, and when I picked it up, I'm not gonna get mud all the way down my back. So yeah, this is a bag that I've just ended up absolutely loving for so many reasons, mostly to do with its size and that waterproof cover that comes in incredibly handy in so many situations. Right, so that's the camera bag I'm using, but let's talk about what I put in my camera bag, and let's start this video off talking about cameras. Now the camera I'm using and the camera I use for every single YouTube video, every single wedding, every single video work that I do is this, and it's my Canon EOS R5. In fact, I'm using one right now to film this video. Now I love the R5. For me, it pretty much ticks every single box I need a camera to do. Now I'm both photographer as well as filmmaker, so I need a camera that's quite versatile. So I need a camera that can shoot high resolution photography as well as high resolution video, and the R5 does both perfectly. It's got 45 megapixels full frame, which is great for photography, brilliant amount of resolution, as well as you can shoot up to 8K 30 frames video. Don't really use that. File sizes are just too big, but more importantly, it can shoot 4K both 25, 50 and 4K 100, which gives you great amount of versatility over frame rates. You can film 25, which is what I'm doing now for my YouTube, but maybe you can jump up, film a little bit of slow motion in 4K 50, and then you can film ultra slow motion in 4K 100. Do bear in mind though, if you do want to shoot 4K 100, you are going to need a CF Express Type B card, which are far more expensive than the SD cards, which is why predominantly I shoot in either 4K 25 or 4K 50. And another reason I really like the R5 for video is it shoots in C-Log 3, which is Canon's latest log profile, which gives you more flexibility when it comes to exposure, but also giving you a lot more creativity when it comes to color grading in post-production. It's a less saturated, flatter profile than standard, and it gives you so much more creativity, which I love with the R5. Now sure, there are a few limitations to this camera. The battery life isn't amazing, especially if you're shooting in 4K, and that 29-minute, 59-second record limit can be quite frustrating, especially when it comes to weddings. Filming any of the ceremony or any of the speeches, sometimes they are longer than 30 minutes, so you have to stop and then start recording. So that's very frustrating, and I wish an update maybe would come and fix it, although I do doubt it. I'm probably gonna have to buy maybe the R5 Mark II to actually remedy that situation. But for me, I honestly think the R5 is one of the best cameras you can buy still in 2024. Now, I'm sure a few of you will write down in the comments that the R5 is famous for overheating. And to be honest with you, it's not something that I've really noticed. It's overheated me, I think, once or twice, but only when it was a really hot summer's day and I was filming in the sun. But all other times, I have had the heat warning, but it's never cut off on me, which I think is really impressive from this camera. You think how small and lightweight it is, and it's packed with features like, for example, 8K 30. So I'm sure it has overheated for some, but for me, I've never really run into that problem. Now, I've actually added a camera cage to mine, which means you can actually rig it up. So I can add NATO rails to the bottom. I've actually got an Atomos Ninja, which I use a lot for when I'm doing any work, especially outside. So I know what I'm shooting when I'm shooting to a specific LUT, for example. I can actually see that visually on the screen, as well as you can add a top arm, for example, if you're doing any handheld work. You can get a lot more stable footage if you're actually using a top arm, and you wouldn't be able to do that if you didn't get a camera cage. So if you are shooting on an R5 or any camera for that matter, highly recommend a camera cage. But if you are still thinking about what camera is right for you, if you are a photographer and filmmaker, I personally think the R5 is one of the best cameras you can buy still in 2024. Now, when it comes to camera lenses, I do use quite a variety because it really depends on what type of work I'm doing. If I'm filming a wedding or if I'm filming a YouTube video, I might be using a different lens to if I'm filming outside, maybe doing wildlife. So let me quickly talk you through what camera lenses I own, as well as why I use them. So the first lens I own is this, and it's my Sigma 35mm f1.4 Art, and it's an EF fit. Most of the lenses I own are EF fit, and obviously that means I need an EF to RF adapter. And to be honest, that adapter works really well even with third-party lenses, like for example, this Sigma. Now the Sigma lens, the 35mm, is probably the one that I use around 80 to 90% of the time. The only time I realistically don't use this lens is for most of my newer YouTube videos, including the one that I'm filming at the moment. But if I'm ever doing a video, for example, I work with MPB, I often use this lens because it's very versatile. A 35mm focal length is great for talking headshots, it's great for interviews, it's also great for weddings as well. It's just a very versatile focal length for me. It's by far my favorite focal length, and to be honest with you, I always gravitate towards this lens. I kind of know the focal length I'm getting, and because it's a prime lens, it's really sharp, it's got good autofocus, which is great for video, as well as it's got that beautiful shallow depth of field. I can shoot at f2 or maybe f2.5 and get a lovely background separation. So if you are after a lens that can realistically do almost everything, then I highly recommend a Sigma 35mm. And the bokeh from this lens is just beautiful. Shooting in low light, yeah, this lens is always in my camera bag. And to be honest with you, I shoot around 80 to 90% of my work on this very one lens. Now, when I'm not filming outside and I'm filming inside my studio, predominantly filming my YouTube videos, I'm actually using my Sigma 24mm f1.4 Art. Now again, this is EF fit, so I need to use that EF to RF adapter to actually effectively use it on my R5. Now this is a very similar lens to the 35mm. In fact, pretty much identical apart from the focal length. It's got the same aperture and it's pretty much got the same look when it comes to colors and compression, although it's just ever so slightly wider, which gives me a little bit more of a different look when it comes to my YouTube videos. Now, I haven't got a massive room. As you can see, it's not a very big room I film. It's actually my spare room in my house. And for that, I need a slightly wider lens to make the room look a little bit larger. And for me, the Sigma is absolutely perfect. Firstly, it's a prime lens, so again, ultra sharp and great for low light. Offers that beautiful shallow depth of field. Most of the time, in fact, at the moment, I'm shooting at f2, which I wouldn't be able to do on a zoom lens. And it just gives me that nice separation to my background. Again, I'm not in a very large room, so an f2 to f1.8 aperture lens gives you a nice depth of field to make it look a lot larger, make the background look a little bit further away. Now, it's not the perfect lens, it's quite heavy, but for me, that doesn't really matter because most of the time it's sitting on a tripod inside my YouTube studio. Now, sometimes I don't like shooting wide angle, although wide angle works in some situations. Sometimes you want a nice close-up. Maybe you're doing a wedding and want some nice intimate close-up shots. 35mm or 24mm is just not going to cut it, which is why I also own this, the Canon EF 85mm f1.4 IS. Now, it's actually the only image stabilization prime lens that I own, which means it is great for handheld video shooting. And if I'm ever doing handheld, this is usually the lens I'm bringing with me. Now, if I'm filming out and about, maybe I'm filming a YouTube video or maybe I'm just filming a lens review, I usually don't bring this lens. It's a little bit too big and a little bit too heavy, and realistically, you can't film yourself with an 85mm, so usually it stays at home, but I always bring it to a lot of my weddings. It's a great wedding filmmaking lens. It's beautiful because of that f1.4 aperture, and it's the same aperture as my 35mm and my 24mm, so I'm known getting consistent brightness, doesn't matter which aperture I'm filming at, as well as it's an ultra sharp lens, and thanks to that image stabilization, it's one of very few lenses I know I can realistically shoot handheld, which is why for weddings, I always make sure it's in my camera bag. Now, when it comes to filming for YouTube, there are a few lenses I always gravitate towards, and one of them is my only macro lens, and it's my EF 100mm f2.8 macro. You won't believe how many times I use this for a lot of my B-roll shots. Firstly, it's a macro lens, so I can get a little bit closer than pretty much any other lens I own. As well, it's just so sharp and just so reliable. It's also got image stabilization. It's got like a hybrid image stabilization system, which means I can do really good handheld shots and still getting pretty smooth motion. Sometimes I'm filming at 50 frames, and it just adds that nice fluid motion, which other lenses just don't seem to offer you. Now for B-roll, this is a B-roll monster. It is great. I can get nice close-up shots, especially if I'm doing any lens reviews. If you've ever watched any of my lens reviews on my other channel, the likelihood you've viewed it through this lens. It's just such a good lens. Now for weddings, I sometimes film a lot of the rings, and again, this is a great lens for that. Having a macro lens in your arsenal is something I always recommend, and if you're in the Canon ecosystem, this lens here, the 100mm, is absolutely amazing. And the last lens I usually bring with me, if I've got room, is this, and it's my Canon EF 70-200mm f2.8. Now having a zoom lens, especially for video, can be incredibly helpful, and this one here is perfect, a very versatile focal length. Far longer than any other prime lens I own, which means it fits in my camera bag beautifully. I could bring maybe my 35mm and then my 70-200mm. If I'm doing any maybe establishing shots of the location, this lens here is great for that. I can zoom into the small intricate details of maybe the landscape or maybe the architecture that I'm in. Maybe I'm filming in London. This is a great lens for that. Again, what's also really nice is most of the filter threads are the same, and we'll talk about that in a bit. This is 77mm. Most of the other lenses I own are 77mm, so all of them seem to complement each other beautifully. Now, having a zoom lens is handy, but the downside to it is the only one with an f2.8 aperture, and most of the time I'm shooting between f2 to 2.8. But when I'm shooting with this lens here, it's just so reliable, it's something I can easily overcome. And because of its internal focus, if I'm ever filming outside in the rain, or maybe I'm filming any wildlife, because it's internal focus, it's great for weather sealing. So if I'm out and about, especially if I'm filming wildlife, this is the lens that I use. Right, so that's enough about the camera lenses. Let's talk about the all-important accessories and what accessories I bring on most video shoots, because I think choosing the right accessories can really elevate your video quality. Now, accessory I always bring with me, especially if I'm doing any video work outside, is one of these. This is a VND, or variable neutral density filter. Now, I think this is a Calumet 2 to 8 stop one, which is perfect for fairly bright conditions as well as more shaded parts, especially if you're filming maybe inside, then you're jumping outside and vice versa. This is a great accessory to have. Now, I always use a variable ND, mostly because it lets me basically control the amount of light that hits the sensor without changing the shutter speed, aperture, or ISO. I want to shoot at the native ISO. I want to shoot fairly wide open between f2 to 2.8, and I definitely don't want to be changing my shutter speed because that could definitely affect the amount of motion in my video. So buying a decent quality variable neutral density filter is really important. Now, this one's got a little bit of a color cast to it. It's a little bit magenta, I've noticed, but that's something I can easily fix in post, and hopefully in the future I'll probably buy one of those Polar Pro ones, because I've been told those are excellent, but they are quite expensive. But for the moment, this filter is the one I make sure I always bring with me, especially if I'm shooting video outside. Now, when it comes to using any sort of filter, including my variable ND, I own all of them at 82mm, which means sometimes, most of my lenses aren't 82mm, which means it doesn't fit. So how can I get a nice expensive ND to fit on all of my lenses without having to buy one at 67mm, 72mm, 77mm? Well, what you can do is basically buy a step-up ring. And in fact, I own quite a few. So I own a 67 to 82mm, so I can screw this on the front of my Sigma 35mm, which is 67mm, and I can use an 82mm filter thread. And it's the same situation for my Sigma 24mm. That's a 72mm, so I've got a 72 to 82mm one there, and I've got basically a whole bunch of others. So what's nice is you can basically have a whole range of different lenses at different filter thread sizes, but just use one filter. Now obviously that does mean you can't use the actual lens hood that comes with the lens, which is why I use a matte box. But yeah, these are incredibly helpful, mostly for just reducing the amount of cost it comes to buying filters. You buy one really nice filter and it will fit on all of your lenses. All you'll need to buy is a 15 to 20 quid step-up ring. Now, when it comes to audio, I'm usually filming people, which means the likelihood I'm probably using a set of wireless microphones. And the microphones that I absolutely love is the DJI mics. Now what it does comes in this really nice wirelessly charging box, which is awesome. It keeps them nice and charged in my camera bag. And then you get a left one and a right one, so you can film two people at the same time. Then in the middle, you've got your receiver. Now these are great. I think I've used the Rode Wireless Go 2s, and to be honest with you, I just ended up not liking them. I had a few corruption issues, as well as I actually turned the receiver on, and then in about 30 seconds, it randomly turned itself off. And I just think after a year or two of using them pretty much every single day, they ended up basically busting. But yeah, these ones here I really like, mostly because they're far smaller than the Rodes, but also just little things, like for example, comes in a charging box. So I know if I've packed this, these are in there, as well as the actual screen is forward facing. So when you're actually having it on your camera, it's facing towards you. So you can actually watch the gains, and it's touchscreen, which the Rodes weren't also, which is again, really, really helpful. So yeah, if I'm ever usually filming people outside, the DJI mics are perfect. And also they come in a little bag with, I think they come with those little wind socks. So they prevent wind, because sometimes I'm filming outside and it's windy. Yeah, there we go. They're in this little bag here. Yeah, really good mics. I might actually buy a second set so I can have one on camera A and one on camera B for weddings. But if I'm ever filming outside or ever filming YouTube videos, these are usually in my camera bag. Now, when you are recording audio in the field, you want to make sure that you're actively listening to it so you haven't got any audio interferences. Like, for example, wireless microphones always have a tendency of dropping in and out of range, even when you are quite close, just due to their simply Wi-Fi based. You want to make sure you're actively listening to your audio. So this is why I recommend getting a set of good headphones. And these are the headphones that I have decided to go with. These are the Rode NTH100s. Now, these are a pair of over-ear headphones, so they're quite good for noise cancelling. They're not actively noise cancelling, as well as they are wired. So I've got my cable here that's about 3 meters long, and I always make sure that I'm always actively listening to my microphone and to my audio. I also use these for editing as well. They're just a 3.5mm to 3.5mm, so you can actually swap this cable out if it is a little bit too long or too short. So I use these for editing, I use these for in the field recording. The only real downside is they are quite big, so they don't fit in my camera bag great. I wish they kind of folded up a little bit, but as you can see, they don't really do that. So they are a bit cumbersome when it comes to that. But what's most important, they are neutral sounding. So they're not adding bass or anything like that. So you're gonna get what you're hearing directly from it. It's not gonna be interfering with that in any way. So if you are gonna get a set of headphones, make sure they are neutral. And if you are wanting after recommendation, I think the Rode, I can never remember the name of these, Rode NTH100s are the ones that I recommend. Now, it wouldn't be right doing a what's in my camera bag video and not talk about gimbals. And the gimbal that I use is this, and it's my DJI RS2. And nothing else really to say about it. It is a great gimbal. It's great for when you're doing any walking shots, you're getting nice stable footage. Usually, a kind of a golden rule that I usually have is on a gimbal or it's on a tripod. I rarely do any handheld shooting. Sometimes I do, but most of the time it's on a gimbal or it's on a tripod. I hate shaky footage, and I hate delivering shaky footage to a client. Now, this gimbal is great for an R5. If you had any larger camera, maybe if you had any cinema cameras, it may not fit in the cradle, but for most modern mirrorless cameras, this is a absolutely perfect gimbal. Either the older version, the RS2, or you can get the RS3, which is pretty much the same thing. The motors are a little bit larger, a little bit smoother, but for most of the situation, this is absolutely perfect. And if you are after a recommendation, the RS2 is a gimbal I always trust to get me nice, smooth footage. And the last thing I usually bring with me in my camera bag is my drone. Now, I don't always bring a drone with me. It really depends on the type of video shoot I'm going on. If I'm doing an inner city photo shoot or I'm doing a studio shoot, bringing a drone is pretty much useless, but if I'm doing anything outside or if I'm shooting a wedding or any landscape work, I usually bring my drone to get beautiful establishing shots, especially of the location or of the venue. And the drone that I've decided to buy is the DJI Mavic 3. And I brought this drone for a variety of reasons. Firstly, it's got great battery life. You get around 30 minutes of flight time per battery, which is more than enough to get establishing shots and great shots of your location. As well as I also bought the Fly More kit, so it actually comes with 3 batteries. So if I'm ever going away on a weekend or I'm just doing a lot of drone shots, 3 batteries is more than enough to get amazing shots of pretty much everything that you're going to be going to. As well as it folds up, so it means it doesn't take up that much room in your camera bag. Grant you, it's not the smallest drone in the world. I think like the Mini 3 and the Mini 4 Pro are a little bit smaller, but for the size and weight aspect when it comes to the image quality, I think it's perfect. And lastly, the sensor. That is why I brought this drone. It's got a Hasselblad Micro Four Thirds sensor, so it's got a really big sensor and the colors you get from it are beautiful. I've taken it to Norway and it allowed me to shoot in D-Log, which is DJI's log profile, which means you can color grade in post-production with a slightly less saturated, flatter profile, and you can get beautiful colors with it. And I've used it a couple times, then I for a review, and then I ended up buying it and I love it. And I always bring it with me, especially when I'm going to any epic location, like for example, Wales, Northern Ireland, or even Norway. Brilliant, and there we go guys. So that is what's in my camera bag in 2024. And of course, make sure to write down in the comments below what you guys shoot with. What cameras do you use? What lenses do you use? And what accessories do you recommend? Make sure to write it down in the comments below. I've been James for Video Fever, and I'll catch you guys next time.